Hi and welcome. Thank you for joining us for this Empowerment Self-Defense and LGBTQI plus discussion. My name is Victoria Wachira from Empowerment Self-Defense Global. Empowerment Self-Defense Global is a nonprofit organization that works in various regions to establish empowerment self-defense as a key violence prevention strategy for individuals like me and you, and marginalized communities to interrupt, respond to, and heal from violence. With me today are three activists from the LGBTI community and allies, and we'll be talking about the diversity of the LGBTIQ community in Africa, the challenges that they face, and what we can do to support. So I'll go right into it and let the panelists introduce themselves, tell us a little bit of who they are, the pronouns that they prefer to use, as well as the work that they do for the LGBTI community in their regions. And last but not least, the challenges and the opportunities that they face in their daily work. Brandy, Kiki, would you like to go first?
Hi guys, I don't know why I'm so nervous. My name is Brandy Kiki. I am an LGBTQ activist from Cameroon. I currently live in the UK. I am a Black Beetle Health trustee. I am also a Rainbow Migration trustee and a Living Free trustee. I prefer, my pronouns are her and she. And I would just like to indicate during this conversation that all thoughts represented here are all mine and do not have anything to do with the individuals or organizations that I work with.
Thanks, Kiki. What are some of the challenges going into the work that you do and the opportunities that you are, that you see on a daily basis for the LGBTIQ plus community in your region?
I guess because I do a lot of work around the LGBTQ community in Cameroon, and I do most of it online. I guess sometimes it's the bullying that happens online. Sometimes people create a lot of fake profiles and spew a lot of hate online. And unfortunately, the cyber laws in Cameroon are not very good, so you can't really pinpoint anybody to those comments. And even if the laws were good, LGBTQ, well, sorry, my thoughts are running around. Homosexuality is a crime in Cameroon, and obviously the government wouldn't do anything about it. In the UK, I find that it's difficult to find spaces where I feel fully represented. For example, now I find a space where queer people are welcomed, but there's a lot of homophobia, a lot of racism in those spaces. Then I find spaces where I can celebrate my Blackness, but then again, there's a lot of homophobia in those spaces. So it's difficult to find a space where you are fully celebrated or your identities are celebrated as well. Yeah, so those are some of the challenges that I face.
Thank you so much. Hopefully this discussion will be delving more about these opportunities and the challenges that you face and how we can overcome them and how everyone else can help in supporting the LGBTIQ plus community. Kamelia?
Thanks, Victoria. My name is Kamelia, and I'm the program officer for the Africa regions. I identify as she, her, hers. And sometimes I think the challenges that I face especially when we want to partner with organizations, especially the nonprofits, sometimes in the Africa region, they use their backbone or their foundation on religious basis, and it's hard to include the LGBTIQ plus community in that in their community. So I think that's like one of the first challenges we face when we want to partner, especially when we want to increase awareness about the importance of ESD within the African regions.
That's actually a really important insight that you've given. We have another panelist that will be joining us shortly. His name is Bob Bwana from IceBreakers Uganda, one of the organizations that have undergone a training with ESD. He should be joining us shortly. And as we wait for him, basically we can talk about all the microaggressions or hurtful comments or any type of discrimination that you've ever witnessed an LGBTIQ+ person go through from your earliest memory. Do you have any such incident? Is there something that you want to share? Did you hear a comment that was untoward, or did you see actual physical violence? And what was your response to that? How did you see, the people involved respond to that as well? Because any discrimination not only affects the person who's targeted, but also the people around them. Kamelia, would you ask?
Sure. I think it's pretty hard to think of like the first memory, especially if you're born in an environment where it's illegal to be part of the LGBTIQ+ community, because from the beginning you are exposed to so many types of discrimination. But I think one individual that stood out for me, and I am in awe of their story, is a young woman who followed everything that she's supposed to follow in terms of traditions, the type of education, the type of behavior she should be following. But then growing up, she found out that she identified as him and his, and she had to come out to her family, but then she cannot do that because of the how hard it is to be accepted. And so when she did that, she came out to his mother and sister. His parents, his mother and sister told him that they cannot do that with their other parents, their father and other family members, because there is no way that they can be accepted. And so to this day, he still has to live in hiding if he wants to be himself. And I think it's kind of a discrimination that they live within their own family surrounding, which I think is the most difficult thing to do, let alone export that type of life towards society. So I think that's a story that is, I'm sure, similar to many others, but it's a story that still is very hard to be witnessing, especially because I've known this person for a long time.
That's quite something, Kamelia. And Kiki, do you have anything or any memory that you have of the first time you witnessed any sort of discrimination of an LGBTIQ+?
I think as a Catholic, the first time I witnessed any sort of discrimination was in church. Growing up Catholic, the language that was used to describe or talk about LGBTQ people in church was very violent and very hateful. And outside the church, I think in my mid-teens, there was a list of politicians that was published by a newspaper in Cameroon in 2006, where you had a lot of violent language describing them and how they were a disgrace to the Cameroon culture. There was a massive witch hunt about it. And at that point, I was like, okay, if this is how these people feel about homosexuality, am I going to be okay in this environment? So yeah, those are the two instances that I can think of.
Yeah, it's really, really like what my takeaway from this is that it's really ingrained. The whole perspective and discriminating against LGBTIQ+ people is ingrained. It's in families, it's in the social structure, it's in communities. religious places, all the places that you would expect, someone to feel safe.
Yes, exactly.
Those are the places that you cannot find the support that you need. There's a survey that was done by the Trevor Project. It's US-based in 2020, and it indicates that this particular COVID-19 pandemic has been particularly hard for LGBTIQ plus youth, who are up to 1.75 times more likely to, fall into depression or anxiety. And this is something that's not really talked about. And this discrimination affects, mental well-being of individuals throughout different places, not just in Africa, in Europe, in Asia as well. And I'd like to find out, some of the ways that you have seen LGBTIQ plus people discriminated against and how it's affected them when it comes to physical wellness, health wellness, mental wellness, and any other interaction that they have with anyone else.
Is that me?
You please.
Okay.
You could go first.
I think, especially within the African community, homophobia, because of the homophobia that we have in those spaces, a lot of LGBTQ people don't have social support, which means that if, for example, if I had a relationship problem, it would be difficult to find somebody to talk to. Worst of all, if I'm still in the closet. You and I can imagine what it feels like to be able to rant to a friend about something that somebody did to you. From my experience in the past, what I used to do was to be able to rant to friends whilst I was in the closet. What I used to do was change the pronoun of the person I was talking about to a he, so that I could be more accepting. But then again, I had problems there because I remember a friend telling me, why is he so emotional? He sounds like a woman. and mentally I'm thinking, because it's a woman, I can't just tell you, I can't just tell you that. So again, the quality of support we receive because of our sexuality, is zero. Also, talking about the well-being of LGBTQ people, when an LGBTQ person, especially when you don't fit the standards of what a man should look like or what a woman should look like, sometimes you don't have access to good health. You understand? I know a friend in Nigeria who got beaten up by a doctor, okay, simply because of their sexuality, and the doctor was like, my faith doesn't agree with this. And I also know somebody within the community as well who has been refused employment simply because they don't dress and act like a woman should. You understand? Which means then that they don't have any income to support themselves. They can't afford healthcare. And in other ways, it means they're living a life in destitute simply because people don't want to accept them for who they are. So in so many ways, I think, I have my personal stories. When I came out as a lesbian, I had a lot of paying clients, stop picking my calls. I had a lot of them say that they don't have anything to do with, they don't have any homophobia bone in them. However, they would lose business by association, so they can't work with me. So it's happened to me, it's happened to a lot of people within the community. And I don't think, the other day I was having a conversation on Facebook explaining how, for example, I think you're from Kenya, Victoria. If you don't eat ugali, you can't expect people not to eat it, or you can't force, if you like it too much, you can't force everybody to eat ugali. That's wrong. You see, if you like burgers, don't force everybody to eat burgers. Let people have a choice. I'm not reducing sexuality to food. I love food, by the way, so I'm going to talk about food all the time. I'm not, but it's inhumane to always want people to do something just because you do it, to want people to live a life or dress in a certain way simply because of the way you like dressing. Interestingly, I found out something the other day that women don't necessarily like pink. Pink was a marketing strategy by Barbie. It was introduced by Barbie. And now in society, people are being held to that standard. A man wears pink and they're like, oh no, men shouldn't wear pink. And that was a marketing strategy, you see. So I can go into so many different areas or how our well-being is affected, but well, the time I'll let Kamelia speak.
Great points. And to add on that in general, definitely the vulnerability of LGBTIQ plus persons in Africa to public health and other risks is definitely heightened by their exclusion from socioeconomic opportunities and services. And unfortunately, these experiences with discrimination and stigmatization can lead to a higher likelihood of emotional stress, depression, and anxiety. And since people can often feel pressure to fit in with society conventional ideas of being male or female, those who don't fit in the mold can subject to ridicule, intimidation, and even physical abuse. So even though there is an increased acceptance of LGBTIQ plus people in some African countries, and I'm comparing this to 20, 30 years ago, especially in South Africa, a greater visibility in the media and public life, especially in the media and public life, many LGBTIQ plus people still experience discrimination and human rights violation, harassment, and violence at work, school, and social situations. So these types of discrimination increases the risk of poor mental and physical health, including suicide, PTSD, substance use, and also cardiovascular diseases. And this makes it really hard to all these create this hostile social climate that taxes individuals' coping resources and contributes to that minority stress. And it's very sad, but I know these are very negative points of view, but I just wanted to end with a positive one, is that, protective factors against the harm of discrimination include community and family support, access to affirming healthcare and social services, and the establishment of positive social climates, inclusive practices, and anti-discrimination policies. But I think the best of them is definitely the friends and family support, because if you get the chance to speak to someone openly without replacing the pronouns, without feeling that you have to hide certain parts of your life, I think it's a little bit easier to deal with it and to decrease the impact of those health issues or potential health issues.
That's really an exhaustive, list of things that LGBTQ people experience and what they go through. And what I've heard from you and Kiki is that throughout all this discrimination and, literal being, refused access to medical care by a doctor, getting harassed physically by a doctor, and these discriminatory laws. What I'm saying that laws in Africa play a central role in unlocking LGBTQ plus rights, and I'd like to have a conversation about that the absence of these laws that safeguard the rights of the LGBTQ plus, how they perpetuate in some way, and in fact a lot of ways, right, the discrimination and the violence that goes on, that we witness on a daily in the news and social media as well. Recently, we had a case about Ghana, and the LGBTQ plus activists that were arbitrarily arrested by police. They had gathered for a workshop and were literally arrested there with no reason, put in jail for over a month, no charges brought against them. They weren't doing anything illegal, were not hurting anyone, were allowed to actually meet. So the fact that it went all the way to the point that a campaign had to start, Free the 21, for them to get a hearing, for them to get bail, for them to be released, it really just highlights the lack of laws that protect and safeguard the LGBTIQ plus community. Do you have anything to add, Kiki?
Yeah, I mean, I know what you're talking about when it comes to Ghana. It's been it's currently happening as well, the bill. I don't know if it's been passed or it's still to be passed. In Cameroon as well, we had a situation very recently where 2 trans women were arrested and imprisoned for attempted homosexuality. I mean, their case was very public and we had a lot of conversations around it, but there are also a lot of people in jail who were arrested for one reason or another, some of them extortion, blackmail. In Cameroon, we have what is called weekend arrest, where police arrest people like on a Friday and then keep you there throughout the weekend and then collect bribe and release you on a Monday. So unfortunately, across a lot of African countries, we still have colonial era LGBTQ laws being upheld. And what is then happening is that people like myself, of course, I'm not there physically, are not allowed to enjoy rights that should be enjoyed. Now, I think all African countries except Sudan is part of the African, I think it's African Charter, yes, part of the African Charter, which grants right to all rights and protection to everyone, you know. But again, when it comes to individual countries implementing that, it doesn't happen. We don't see that happening. For example, in a country like South Africa, where homosexuality is even legal, you still have a lot of violence against the LGBTQ community. And this violence is reported. Nobody does anything about it. You understand? Nothing is taken seriously. So yes, I think policymakers need to educate themselves. Policymakers need to have conversations with the LGBTQ community, people, organizations or groups. They need we need to go back to pre-colonial African history and educate ourselves, where Africans were allowed to celebrate all their identities, queer or straight. I find it a bit odd as well. I can't remember the name of the African president who said he doesn't have any, he's an ex-president, by the way. He doesn't have any problem with the LGBTQ community. However, he wasn't willing to lose an election because of the LGBTQ community. So by supporting the LGBT community, he thought he would lose an election. And you can see across the continent as well, a lot of politicians like himself use the LGBT community as bait to win elections. In times of political crisis, mention the LGBTQ community, deal with them, create some sort of a witch hunt, and people get distracted. Now, a lot of Ghanaians, Christian Ghanaians and traditional Ghanaians are saying, oh yeah, we'll not allow that in this country. But there's an economic crisis, going on as well as they passed the LGBTQ bill going on. So we can see a lot of people taking advantage of that. Now, Cameroon is going through a political crisis in the English-speaking region. I don't know if you know anything about that. A lot of people have been killed, and they're still being killed. A lot of people have been kidnapped and all that. However, during the Patricia and Shakiro case, the 2 trans women who were arrested and jailed, the nations seem to unite, against them, towards that sort of hate. You understand? So it's very easy. Again, like I said, it's easy, and African leaders have been doing it. They've been using us to win elections. They've been using us to handle economic crisis. And I don't know if, to be honest, when somebody asked me, do you see that change happening? It would only happen if somebody is willing to lose an election, if somebody is willing to have different conversations, if our voices are louder than our fear. I mean, it's easier to, somebody would say it's easier to say that from the UK. But yeah, I mean, I guess, to be honest, I can go on and on about this because it annoys me.
Oh, that's a couple of important points that you've raised, that we need to really differentiate between the laws that are African and the laws that are imported, and just get back to the drawing board and see what works for us and what doesn't, and have a conversation that's inclusive with the LGBTIQ plus community, because how are people making laws without consulting the people that are actually affected? Right. So we've been joined by Bob He is actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to let him introduce himself and he can catch up on the conversation that we've been having. Hi, Bob.
I think he's got a bit of internet issue because he's just sat there.
Okay. So, Kamelia, did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
I think, you know, Brandy definitely highlighted that importance of political influence versus social influence. And I think that it's very hard to see how you can raise awareness about the LGBTIQ plus community. Do you start with the political figures, or do you start by grassroots organization, meaning like a domino effect, start one by one from the people, and then the people are the ones influencing the political parties instead of the other way around. I'm more of a trickle up person. I really strongly believe that you can really change a lot if you start by the people themselves instead of the political parties, because they're the one who will be voting, they're the one who will be choosing their candidates. And I think we've seen a lot of examples throughout the years, you know, with the Arab Spring, with many demonstrations against certain individuals. But I think that it's important to really start by society itself, because that hatred needs to be erased as a first step. But I know it's a very difficult thing to do, especially with all the influences that are surrounding our African countries.
Hi, Bob. Thank you for that, Kamelia. Just catching him up with what we're talking about. We're talking about how laws and policies are key to unlocking LGBT rights in Africa. And even before you delve into that, maybe you could just give us a brief introduction of who you are, what you do in the LGBTIQ plus community, your pronouns as well. And this is quite the question, some of the challenges and the opportunities that you face in your work with the LGBTIQ plus community.
I think he has internet issues again.
Oh, what we're going to do is just keep going on with the conversation, and he can jump in when and he's able to. One of the things that is really not talked about in the LGBTIQ plus community is domestic violence and intimate partner violence. So there is, you know, that one-on-one relationship dynamic that goes on with the different LGBTIQ plus relationships, you know, lesbians, bisexuals, gays. So you find that other queers, you find that there is that interrelationality and, you know, that incidence of domestic violence. In fact, recent research from South Africa shows that LGBTIQ plus members experience domestic violence, you know, at the same rate or even more compared to their heterosexual partner counterparts. So why is intimate partner violence and domestic violence issues in the LGBTIQ plus community an underestimated issue?
I think I'm gonna go first, but yeah. So the thing is, again, across a lot of countries, homosexuality is illegal, isn't it? So how are you going to then report somebody who is being violent with you within a relationship without exposing or reporting yourself? We had an incident in Cameroon where a girl was burned with hot water all over, like really first degree burns by the girlfriend, and we couldn't do anything about it because obviously going to the police, we have to at least, what sort of the relationship dynamics. We have to explain to the police. In other areas as well, because of homophobia, for example, I'm not supposed to be in a relationship with somebody. You don't like that relationship that I am in. Maybe if you're my friend, it's then difficult to come back to you and say that I'm being abused by that person. If you didn't condone to the relationship in the first place, coming back to you to say that, oh, I'm suffering from abuse, or I feel like things are getting a bit weird with that person, it's almost impossible. The other part of it is, oh, my thoughts are just flying, to be honest. I can't string them in. Yeah. The other part of it is the shame. Yeah, the shame that comes with admitting that another woman beat you up, or another guy, two guys in a relationship beat you up. There's a shame that comes with that. So I think in a way, because of these gaps, a lot of violence goes unreported. Now, in some places, for example, South Africa, where again, you did mention that there's a lot of violence going on, police don't take it seriously. If, for example, you tell somebody, oh, my partner is abusive, and how can you let another woman beat you? It's like the violence that happens between from a woman to a man, like a woman hitting a man. When you report that across Africa, the response is always like, you're a man, act like a man, don't let the woman beat you up. Do you understand? So it's almost like a similar response to when you report a woman hitting another woman to the police in countries where it's legal. In countries where it's not illegal, you don't even have that opportunity. Now, the other thing that escalates this violence as well is the trauma that we all share. Some people release the pressure. Imagine being in a space where you're worried about somebody blackmailing you, you're worried about somebody finding out about your sexuality, you're worried about so many things. You don't even have money to look after yourself because a job wouldn't employ you because of the way you look, you see. So there's that added pressure, and then there's somebody around you that something that you, in your normal self, you would just have a conversation about it, but because of all these other factors, I'm not saying that people should resort to punching people or being violent towards people, but it escalates these things. You see, it puts you in a mental state where you're not thinking clearly, and of course that which results to violence as well. But yeah, it's a very sad situation, to be honest. Especially as some of the violence is not physical but verbal or threats. For example, we dealt with a situation last time where a girl was in an abusive relationship, and the girl who was abusing her said, "If you leave, I am going to tell your family that you are a lesbian." You see, so now we're trapped. Are we going to let her out her, or she should stay in that abusive space? Is the family going to be violent when they find out as well? You see, it's a very challenging situation, to be honest with you. Again, it all goes down to the laws. If these laws are more accepting, then we have more opportunities to report domestic violence, to seek help when it comes to domestic violence, and maybe talk to professionals as well about anger management and all that. But because of the lack of supporting laws, unfortunately, it doesn't happen.
That's quite something that, with all the anxiety and the stresses and the frustrations that LGBTIQ plus people go through, and that the closest persons that they have is, fellow LGBTIQ plus people, and they somehow take that out on them. It's unfair, and it's a very sad state of affairs. Kamelia, did you have anything to say, or can you move on to?
Brandy talked about two important points that I was thinking about, is the sense of shame and the authorities not taking you seriously. But I just also wanted to highlight one part, is that a lot of authorities still in African countries do not take verbal abuse a serious matter, because it said, oh, maybe you're not strong enough, or they're just words. Words can really affect your mental well-being, and I think that's something that we'll still have to work on. But verbal abuse is definitely a huge part of being an underestimated issue. Absolutely.
So unfortunately, I don't think our other panelists, Bob, will be able to join the conversation. And just to give you a brief background of why we invited him to be a part of the conversation is that he is one of the partners of ESD Global Africa. He has undergone training, ESD Learn the Basics, not just him, but other members of his organization. So what we've been able to do is just give them the skills, the empowerment self-defense skills that they may be able to pass on to LGBTIQ plus people that they deal with on a daily, because IceBreakers Uganda is a support organization for LGBTIQ plus persons in Uganda. And they raise awareness of the issues that they go through and try to support them in whatever other issues. What I do know, even in his absence, is that we've been able to just go through a whole monitoring and evaluation process. And this is something that we apply with every organization that we train in empowerment self-defense, so that we are able to measure what we're doing and see the impact that it has with the people that are involved. There is some information that Kamelia, you might have for us as Program Officer for ESD Global. Are you in a position to share it with us, please?
You're referring to the
post-training.
Yeah, absolutely. So the ESD empowerment self-defense is extremely important, more than ever before. And the lower rate of attempted assault suggests that ESD training empowers and helps interrupting perpetration early in an assault. So once an assault is underway, defense tactics consistent with those taught in ESD reduces the risk of rape completion by more than 80% without increasing the risk of additional injury. So there are 3 recent major studies, including a large randomized controlled trial, have found that women who complete an ESD class are at least 50 to 60% less likely to experience an assault over the following year than similar women who did not learn self-defense. And our own recent data from our ESD training showed that 100% of participants felt more confident about themselves after receiving ESD's online training, as compared to 87.5% of participants who felt confident before receiving online training. Additionally, 75% of participants felt safe in their daily life after receiving ESD's online training, as compared to 42.9% of participants who felt confident before receiving online training. And I just also want to add that there are many ESD practitioners also within ESD Global instructors who hold valuable and long-lasting teaching experiences with the LGBTIQ plus community. And if anyone listening to the panel is interested in accessing trainings for this specific population, they should reach out to ESDG and we will be happy to connect them with the right instructors.
I was about to say, yeah.
Please go on.
I was about to say that I would definitely want to train. Those are very good numbers,
awesome.
By the way. And if possible as well, recommend other organizations in Cameroon for training.
Absolutely.
It's very imperative that we're able to protect ourselves as LGBTQ people. So yeah.
That's really awesome to hear. Basically, what we try to do is reach out to organizations, and with you as a link, we can expand empowerment self-defense through the central region in Africa, and especially with everything that we've talked about today, and the issues and the challenges that we face, the opportunities that we face, that LGBTQ community have to offer, the rest of us, because they're a skilled labor force. They are talented, and there is that inherent value that they have to add to their social circles and to everyone around them. I think that's something that people usually miss out. What are some of the perceptions that you would like to see change about the LGBTIQ plus community in Africa?
I guess my very first is that homosexuality is African. What is un-African is homophobia. Let me repeat myself again. Homosexuality is African. What is un-African is homophobia. Please, I would like to see more Africans read the pre-colonial African history. It's not enough to tell me that the Bible says this, the Bible says that, the law says this, the law says that. These are things that came after, these are factors that came after colonization. Please, 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 Africans, please, can we just educate ourselves? Can we uneducate ourselves as well, unlearn certain behaviors? I also like to say that any Pan-Africanist that is not pro-LGBT is an imposter. So if you're listening to this and you're Pan-Africanist saying, oh yeah, I am pro-African, I want to have, my African views represented, you can't have them without accepting the fact that queer African history has always been part of Africa. You can't be a Pan-Africanist and not accept that, unfortunately. So please do a lot of learning and unlearning. Thank you.
Kame, do you have anything you want to say?
I think Brandy finished it in a quite beautifully, especially the learning and unlearning part. I think it's important to really try to learn about everything you can about the LGBTIQ plus community from all perspective, not just the one that you Western perspective or any other perspective. I think you have to have your own opinion as well without being exposed to that sort of negative influence. But I think the future is bright. I think there will definitely be positive changes because the new generation are more aware of what's happening and they're more accepting than previous generations. So I'm very hopeful and I look forward to many more African activists joining the fight.
I don't want to add anything more. It's been quite the conversation. And there's so many resources of how we can support the LGBTIQ plus community that are going to be posted in the comments, just for you to see, the work that's being done and how you can be a part of it so that we can make the world a safer place for everyone. Because at the end of the day, despite racial differences, sexual differences, socioeconomic differences, identity differences, or physical ability, we are human. And that's the bottom line. For resources on empowerment self-defense, check out our Facebook page, Empowerment Self-Defense Global Africa. We also have a presence in Asia, so check out the ESD Global Facebook page for Asia region, ESD Global Europe, and ESD Global Latin America. Check out our website, esdglobalselfdefense.org, and our YouTube page as well. Ladies, I think that's it from us. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being inclusive and being a part of a very important conversation. And we hope to see you next time.